Okay. So we got to Nun Zayin Amid Beis. Let's just quickly read over the Mishnah that's on Nun Zayin Amid Aleph 57, A4. Well, actually A3. No basula shnei masar chodesh mishatava habala lefarnes es atzma. You give a basula 12 months from the time that that her husband has, given her an offer of marriage to get herself ready. I mean, lefarnes literally means like parnasa. Rashi says to get jewelry, perhaps housewares that she'll need. Just like we give the woman this much time, we give the man that much time also to get himself ready. Rashi says for the needs of the Suda and the Chuppah. For us nowadays, it's the same, but it could be that the Chuppah sometimes was a special place, sometimes in his own place. From certain halachos, it seems like they maybe would add a room onto their house for the chuppah that was for the they didn't have the hotel, the ballroom to rent with the caterer. So I mean, and for example, the Gemara way back in the first parak said berchas chasanim, the shava brachos under the chuppah is beveis chasanim, in the house of the chasan. So some literally say that chuppah is when she comes into your house. So according to some, the chuppah might need to be in his house, so he might need to have a room in his house for the chuppah. So there might be some construction involved, and then with the contractors, so they have to give him 12 months to straighten everything out. Plus the separate, because like I said, the caterers don't come with the banquet, and nowadays they come with the banquet hall, but then he'd also have to arrange to buy the chickens or the whatever to shecht and to get all the food ready. Yezman v'lo excuse me, ula almana shloshim yom. But if it's a widow, 30 days, because I guess she has some of the stuff from before, so she won't need as much time to get everything together for the wedding. Yezman v'lo if the time has come and he didn't do nisuin, he didn't ochlos mishalo, she gets to eat from his food. He has to support her for food. V'ochlos b'truma, and if her husband is a kohen, she's allowed to eat truma, even though even though she's not. Now, obviously, when the wedding would be complete, she'd allowed to eat truma. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is here because the 12 months passed that she should have gotten married, so she's allowed to eat truma. Rabbi Tarfon Omer nosin called truma. So if you're allowed to feed her truma, if she's allowed to eat truma, Rabbi Tarfon says. Now, Rabbi Tarfon was a kohen himself, actually. He says you can give her all truma, even though if she would during her period and she would be tmeya, she's not allowed to eat truma, but you can give her truma and she could sell some of the truma and buy regular food with the money that she sells, even though truma is worth less than regular grain. The Gemara will talk about some amounts later. Rabbi Akiva Omer mechza chulin and mechza truma, but Rabbi Akiva says no, you have to give her half chulin and half truma because she's not going to be able to eat truma the whole month, every month. So you give her half and half. Hayav, since she doesn't have to sell any of her truma in order to buy regular food. Hayav ameinu machal b'truma. So if a lady had kedushin with a man and he died, so now she has to do yibum, but the chuppah never happened. So only the original husband who mekadesh her is the one who, after 12 months, if he doesn't marry her, then she's allowed to eat truma. But if he died, so now it's his brother is the yavam. She's not allowed to eat truma after the 12 months are up. And it doesn't matter asta shisha chadashim b'fnei habal v'shisha chadashim b'fnei yavam. It doesn't matter if for half the time, 6 months, it was 6 months after the kedushin that her husband died, and now it's 6 months before the yavam, and now the 12 months are up. Afilu kulum b'fnei habal chasu yom achad b'fnei hayavam, and it doesn't matter if 353 days was with the husband and he died the day before the 12 months, and so it was only one day that she is attached to the yavam. Or even if her husband died the day after he gave her the kedushin, and for 353 days she's connected with the expected yibum / chuppah. So even if it's 353 days by the yavam, does not eat truma because the person who gave her kedushin is not the one who's going to be able to do chuppah because he died. Zu Mishnah Rishona. This was the original halacha based in Shalach Ram Amru Eina Isha Chalas Betruma Achid Comes to Chuppah. But a different basin said a woman is not allowed to eat truma until after chuppah. And here. Minani Mili. How do we know that she gets a year to prepare for the wedding? The Amar of Chista, the Amar Krava, Yamar Chia V'Yimah Teshev Hanara Itanu Yomima Asar. So this pasuk is by Rivka, and Eliezer was successful in his mission that the family approved of Rivka getting married to Yitzchak. So Eliezer says, okay, let's go. And then Lavan and her mother, Rivka's brother and mother, said, let the maiden stay with us, Yamim o Asar. So Yamim usually means days, Asar means 10. So my Yamim, what does the word Yamim mean in that pasuk? And Rashi quotes this Gemara there. Ile matre Yomi. So Yamim is plural. So if it means days, so from drashos throughout Shas, we know that when a plural, we always use the minimum number of plural that makes sense. So the minimum plural of days is 2 days. So it doesn't make sense. If someone asks for 2 days, then because they're in a rush for something to happen, would they say, give me 10 days? If he meant 2 days, he was asking for 2 days. Hachi Amrle, is this what they say to him? Trey Yome, Amrlehu lo, Amrle Asari Yomi. So if they said 2 days and he said no, then they'll ask for 10 days. If 2 days is too long, 10 days is certainly too long. So Yamim can't literally mean 2 days and Asar mean 10 days. So Ella ma Yamim Shana. So what does it mean when he said Yamim? It means a year. Tiksiv Yamim Tiyegu. So this pasuk is from the end of Sefer Vayikra. If you sell a house within a walled city, you have 12 months to redeem the house. Meaning, if you sell an ancestral field, you have till Yovel to redeem it. If it's in a walled city, you have a year. And the way the pasuk talks about that, it says Yamim, days. How many days? The days that make up a year. So Yamim could mean year. So ve'ema chodesh, maybe Yamim means a month. Tiksiv ad chodesh Yamim. So this is when the Bnei Yisrael in Parshas Baloscha were complaining about the man, and so Hashem said, "I'm going to give them slav quail, and they'll eat it until it comes out of their noses." So it said ad chodesh Yamim, until a month worth of days. Chodesh Yamim, a month of days. So maybe here they were asking for 30 days or asara. So in that case, they asked, okay, let Rivka stay a month, then she can go with you. And he said no. So then they said, okay, maybe 10 days. And he said, no, Hashem made me successful. Let's go now. So the Gemara says, Amri Danin Yamim Stam. They said that we could judge or learn the when it says the word Yamim by itself from another pasuk where it says Yamim by itself. The Ein Danin Yamim Stam, Yamim Shember Behen Chodesh. And it doesn't make sense to learn Yamim that's written plain, just Yamim, from a pasuk that says Yam a Chodesh Yamim. Right? Compare Yamim to Yamim. Don't compare Yamim to Chodesh Yamim. That's what it's saying. So basically in that, so Rashi already says over there, they asked that Rivka could stay for 12 months or 10 months. So when it said Asor 10, so it meant 10 months. And Eliezer said, no, Hashem made my mission successful. Let me go back to my master now. So from this, we see that you give a basula up to 12 months to get for the Nesuin to take place. That's what the Gemara is learning from here. Rabbi Zera says, Tana, Ketana, Bein Hiu, Vedavia, Yechol La'akev. A Ketana, whether it's her or whether it's her father, they're able to, La'akev is like to try to push back, but it means like postpone. So if she's still a Ketana, they're allowed to delay and say we want it to. We're not in a rush to do it within the 12 months, and let us wait until she becomes a nara, not the stage of being a kitan anymore. Pishlama ihi matima akva. We understand why she would be able to say, okay, I'm too young, just wait till I become an Ara. Ela avia, but why can her father, ihi nicha leavia my nafgale mina, if it's okay with her to get married and not wait till she becomes an Ara, uh why would her father want to delay the wedding until she becomes an Ara? If it's okay with her, why wouldn't it be okay with the father? So Savar Hashel Yada. So he would think right now she doesn't know everything involved in being married. Rashi says, well, no, Rashi doesn't say that. I thought I saw somewhere, maybe it was Rashi later on, about having to, to do the shopping and the planning. Maybe she has to get a little bit older in order that she'll be able to fully run the house, make her menus, this and that. So the father might think that really she doesn't know what she's doing. Lamachar mir mimrda v'nafka v'asi v'nafli ilai. So maybe after a few days or a few weeks, she realizes that she's getting frustrated from what she has to do, and then she's going to come back to my house, and then I'm going to have to get all this stuff ready for a wedding for a second time. So basically, he's saying it might be okay with her, but she may not know everything that she's getting into, so the father might want to delay, even though he was makadesh her when she was a ketana. He might think it's not in her best interest to get married that young. They should wait for the nisuin for the chuppah until she's a little older. So Amarav Abba Bar Levi, Ain Potkin Alaktana Lasiak Shehi Katana. You can't decide for a katana to get married when she's a katana, Aval Poskin Alaktana Lasiak Shehi Gedola. But you can decide or set a date for a katana, so she's less than 12, that she'll get married once she becomes a gedola. So Rashi says this means that even if they didn't actually formally have Kedushin yet, because the Gemara in Kedushin says that you shouldn't, you can't be Makadesh your minor daughter until she's old enough to say, I want to, I'm okay, I want to marry so-and-so. So Rashi said, so according to Rashi, this Gemara is saying that you could decide to get married. You could even set the date, even though you didn't give the Kedushin yet, because you have to wait till she becomes a Nara, approximately age 12 to for the father to accept Kedushin on her behalf. Pshita. So this seems to be very obvious. Why does the Gemara need to tell us this? We might think that maybe because even though she's not getting married when she's a katana, but she's going to be scared of the stuff that she's going to have to do once she's married, she might become weak. Kamash Malan, where it tells us that we're not worried about that, and we're allowed to set the wedding date and tell her that when the wedding's going to be, even though it's a little bit a ways off. So Tosva, the Rishonim bring that Rabbeinu Tam argues on this, and as Rashi, from Rashi in many places in Shas, it's very clear. You're not that, even though on a Torah level you could, a father could accept Kedushin for his minor daughter, but rabbinically, you're not allowed to. Rabbeinu Tam does not accept that Gemara that Rashi here quotes as halacha, because Rabbeinu Tam says there's a different Gemara in the last chapter of Kedushin where it seems that it happens to also be Rav Chisda, but that he had already accepted Kedushin for his daughter who was a minor, and that was after this time of, who was it, Shmuel who said, or whoever, Rashi doesn't say it here, who said that you're not allowed to make. So Rabbeinu Tam and then Rabbeinu Baruch, a different Rishon, brought a different proof. So not everyone agrees with Rashi on this point. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, it would seem that the Kedushin could have taken place while she was a minor, but they decided they made to make the date that it's after she becomes a Nara, maybe even if it's, let's say, more than 12 months away. That's okay, and that's the proper thing to do, according to Rabbeinu Tam, that you could that the father could be Makadesh's daughter even though she's a Ketana. So again, according to Rashi, it's poskim, meaning you're set the date even though you didn't do the Kedushin yet, because you can't do Kedushin on a Ketana. Whereas according to Rabbeinu Tam, the Kedushin could have taken place, and you still set the date till after she becomes 12 years old. Now we're on 57b2. Amar Rav Huna, if she became a Bogeres, so that's when she's about 12 and a half, because remember, the state of Katnus, and then around age 12, when she starts showing physical signs of maturity, then she's a Nara for 6 months, then after that, she's a Bogeres. So became a Bogeres for 1 day, and then accepted Kedushin, Nosin Lashloshim Yom Kalmana. She gets 30 days like a widow. And not the 12 months like a Basula. So Tosfos asked an obvious question. How much time do we have for her to get married? For the chuppah to happen once she accepted the Kedushin? 12 months. And let's say, according to Rashi, that you can't be Makadesh her until she becomes a Nara already. How long is this period of Naros? Only 6 months. So how can you ever have a case where, I don't know, where will you ever have a case where you'll be able to have a 12-month gap between the Kedushin and the Nesuin, because she becomes a Bogeres in the meantime. And if she's a Bogeres, the Gemara says here, Rav Huna says you only give her 30 days. So Toso says, because we must be holding well, he doesn't, but according to Rashi, that you could only be Makadesh once she's 12 and a half. So this Tosfos accepts Rashi, doesn't know like Rabbeinu Tam. So he explains that the Gemara is talking about Huna's statement is only if the Kedushin happened once she was a Bogeres. But if the Kedushin happened while she was a Nara, then she'll have the full 12 months. Even though by the time the chuppah happens, she'll already be a Bogeres. But it's just saying, if she didn't get married in the 6 months get Kedushin in the 6 months when she's a Bogeres, then she's not, if she didn't get Kedushin in the 6 months while she's a Nara, and she only got Kedushin afterwards, after she was a Bogeres, then she only gets 30 days to prepare for the wedding. So Toso says that if she's already a Bogeres and she doesn't have Kedushin yet, she gets the stuff, she's already getting everything she needs ready faster, so she's not going to need to take all 12 months. So whether this is something to whether it's something that the chassan would be happier about, that he's not going to have to wait as long from her perspective because she's not going to need the all 12 months, whatever. But for her, 1 month is enough. So the Mishnah says she needs to get prepared. So Toso says that when she's already that old, she starts getting ready and preparing everything that she would need, makeup, this, that, the other thing for her wedding. So we're asking a question against Rav Huna. So Rav Huna says that that a Bogeris only gets 30 days. So now we're going to ask a bunch of questions that a Bogeris should also get 12 months to get ready for the chuppah. Bagra harehi ktua. A Bogeris is like, or Bagra is more private. If she became a Bogeris, she's like a regular case who was, given an offer of marriage. So my lav kitvu de basula. So doesn't this brisa mean she gets 12 months like a regular woman who was given an offer of marriage, a proposal of marriage, that it gets 12 months. So the Gemara says, Lo, kitvu dalmana. No, Rav Huna understands that brisa that she only gets the amount of time that an almana would get from an offer of marriage of 30 days to get ready. Tashma. Now we have another question. We learned in a brisa, Bogeres sheshasa shneimos chodesh, a Bogeres who waited 12 months, meaning for the chuppah. The chuppah hasn't taken place yet, and it's 12 months after the kedushin. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Hoel b'chayav b'alabim zanoseha. Since the husband is obligated to pay for her food, yefer, he's allowed to annul her vows. So this brisa clearly says that she was a Bogeres that has waited 12 months. We see a Bogeres also waits 12 months to get married, not like Rav Huna. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. Ema Bogeres visha shasa shnemasar chodesh. You have to read it that we have to add a vav, a Bogeres, not who's been waiting 12 months, vi, or a woman who's waited 12 months and the chuppah didn't happen yet. The husband's allowed to. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yefer. Rabbi Eliezer says since the husband's allowed, has to provide her meals, he's allowed to annul her vows. So that we did not disprove Rav Huna from that brisa. Another brisa, Tashma. We learned in the brisa. Hamare says a basula. If someone gave kedushin erison to a basula, bein shatava bal v'hima keves, whether he gave her the offer of marriage or the date, whatever, and she is holding it up. Or she was in a rush to set the date. Obviously, he had to give her the kedushin, but she's in a rush to set a date, and he's pushing it off. We give her 12 months from the time of this offer of the date for the marriage. But it doesn't start 12 months from the time of erison. Ubagra, and if she became a Bogeres, harehu kitvua. She's like someone who the date of a wedding has been proposed. Ketzad. So what does this mean? What's a case for this? If she became a Bogeres for one day and then she received kedushin, she gets 12 months. Ularusa shloshim yom. And for Narusa, 30 days. Tufta Rav Huna, Tufta. So this disproves Rav Huna because it explicitly said if she became a Bogeres and then she received kedushin, she gets 12 full months. So this has fully refuted Rav Huna. So even a Bogeres gets 12 months. So now the Gemara asks, "My Larusa Shoshim Yom." So the first case of this brisa we understood. If she became a Bogeres and the next day she became engaged or had erison, so she gets 12 months. But it said the last phrase in the brisa said Ularusa Shoshim Yom. Someone who had erison gets 30 days. So what does that phrase mean? We know that. So what does it mean that if she had an erison, she gets 30 days to prepare for the wedding? Rapapa said, Hachikama, this is what it means. Bogeres sha'avru aleha shnemasar chodesh bevagrus v'niskatsha. If she was a Bogeres who already was a Bogeres for a full year, and then she got engaged, then no shoshiyon kalmana. She only gets 30 days to prepare like a widow. So according to this, a Bogeres for her first year of being a Bogeres, she will get 12 months to prepare for the wedding. But if the kedushin was more than a year after she became a Bogeres, then she'll only get 30 days. Now we're on 57b3 with the 2 dots on the first wide line, about 10, 11 lines up from the bottom of Zayin base. Yezman v'lo nisa. If the time has arrived and he didn't fully marry her with Nisuin. Amar Ula, so then she's allowed to, he has to provide her food, and she's allowed to eat truma. So Amar Ula says, Dvar Torah arusa bas Yisrael lachos b'truma. According to Torah law, once a woman has received erisin, kedushin, from a man, she's allowed to eat truma. Shanamar, as the pasuk says, v'kohen ki yikne nefesh kinyan kaspo, v'hainami kinyan kaspahu. Because the pasuk in Parshas Emor, I think it is, when a Kohen will acquire a soul as an acquisition of his money, they're allowed to eat truma. So his family is allowed to eat truma. If he has slaves, the slaves are allowed to eat truma because slaves are considered kinyan kaspo. And it seems, maybe I'm understanding this a little bit wrong, but once she's fully his wife, obviously she's part of his family, so she'd be allowed to eat truma. But in the state of before the Nisuin, but after the Kedushin, so the pasuk is saying she's not worse than Kinyan Kaspo, so she's allowed to eat truma also. So even though she's I don't know that you have to explain the Gemara that way, or just say once he gives her kedushin, she's connected enough to him that she's allowed to eat truma on a Torah level. So why did Chazal say that she's not allowed to eat truma until she fully gets married with Nisuin? And Shema yimzigu lo kos because maybe she will pour a cup of truma wine while she's still in her father's house, while in the period between the Erusin and Kedushin, and she's going to offer it to her brothers or her sisters, and they're Yisraelim, they're not Kohanim. And for them to eat truma there's a heavenly death penalty. So that's a very serious matter. So in order to make sure this doesn't happen, Chazal said that she's not allowed to eat truma, even though she's already mikudeshes to this Kohen until after the chuppah, after the Nisuin. So the Gemara says, nami. But the Mishnah said if the 12 months passed and they didn't have Nisuin, she's allowed to eat truma. So how could be allowed to eat truma? If she's not in her husband's house yet, she can't eat truma. So the Gemara says, Hasam duchta there he gave her a special place to eat. So she's not going to be near her non-Kohen relatives and offer it to them. Almayata lakit Kohen li'Yisrael olecha b'truma. Dilma asu l'mecha b'adei. So maybe what if a Yisrael family hires a laborer who's a Kohen to harvest their crops? So he's a Kohen, he's allowed to eat truma. Well, since they hired him as a laborer, and I don't know exactly the situation, but it sounds like that they're providing room and board for him as well as some type of payment for his wages. So because he's living with them, he's eating their food. But if he's a Kohen, he might give them truma. So why aren't we concerned that this type of Kohen wouldn't be allowed to be hired and live with a non-Kohen family? So the Gemara says, Hashta mididhu safule, but he's getting fed from their food, mididei achli. Are they going to eat from his food? It's true, he might have some food as a Kohen, but since the whole arrangement is that they're paying him and they're giving him a place to a bed to sleep in and food to eat, they're sharing their food with him. We're not worried about him sharing his food with them. I don't know. Maybe you can give another answer, and maybe this is maybe it's a Balabatish answer, not a great Lamdas. But he's a Kohen, so he's all his life he's been eating truma, so he knows that he's not allowed to share truma with a non-Kohen. Whereas this girl who has just had kedushin, she's not a Kohen and she's not used to it. She sees her brothers and her siblings and stuff. If she has food, she shares with them. She's not used to having truma around, so she might make a mistake just because she's not as experienced. But this guy's been a Kohen all his life, so he's experienced. He's not going to make that mistake. I don't know. Maybe it's Balabatish, but that's possible answer. Then the Tosfos asked the opposite. How come it didn't ask the opposite? The last Tosfos says, "No, what if a Kohen would hire a Yisrael? So wouldn't you be worried there if they hire Yisrael? We would be worried that they might feed him truma." So Rashi says there's no. So Tosfos says we're not worried about that at all, because the only problem is if the regular Yisrael Kohen, family hires a Kohen, because sometimes the guests will give some type of treats or some type of mashke, a drink to the household in order that they would like him. And so when he offers it to them, no one's really paying that much attention. But when a Yisrael would be in a Kohen's house, there's no problem. The Kohanim would be very careful about what they're going to give him at the mealtime. So again, I think this goes well with the option I just said. If the family's a Kohen, they know how to separate truma from not truma because they have to do that all the time. Especially because the laws of truma, that if someone's not is tame, they can't eat truma. They have to be very careful and know which people in the house are tame and which people are not tame. So who could touch the truma and who cannot touch the truma. So they're pretty expert. So that's that. Now you could give a different answer for Tosfos' question. I'm not saying because this is a bad answer. It's not a bad answer, but how likely was it that a Kohen would own a field? Kohanim weren't given a chelik baretz, right? So you could say that the Gemara asked about a Kohen who was hired out to help harvest for a Yisrael family because that could happen because that was a semi-likely scenario. But to have a Kohen family who's owned fields and is hiring workers, how many Kohen families own fields? Probably not too many. If they did, it was only temporarily until Yovel probably. Oh, okay, I could be wrong here. Okay, so I just thought of the so since Kohanim didn't own fields, so it was unlikely that they would have a so it's a very less likely scenario, so the Gemara didn't have to worry about a less likely scenario. So that's what I want to suggest as an answer in Tosfos, but I just thought of something that might annul that, but that's not a problem. The Parshas Bahar, let me check something up. No, I misremembered something. Okay. Continuing on. So around 57b3, the last big paragraph. So there's three after this, halfway down the second paragraph, the second column. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda Amar. So basically, why can't the Kohen? So Midiaraisa and Arus is allowed to eat truma. Midrabanan, she's not allowed to. Why not? So the first answer, which is from Ula, is because we're worried that she might give truma to her siblings. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda gives a different answer. Mishum simpon. There might be some type of blemish that she has that would cause the wedding, the marriage to be canceled. Yihachi, if so meaning, even though they already gave Kedushin, it's possible that he's going to find out that she has some type of defect, physical defect that he didn't know. Maybe she has a wooden leg, and he doesn't really know that yet, or something, so certain types of major problems. He thought she had blue eyes and it was brown eyes. That's not a problem. But if he didn't realize that she had a prosthetic limb, that would be something which would allow him to not just to get divorced, but it would annul the marriage retroactively and show that they were never connected. So we're worried that maybe she would have some type of defect, which would be an annulling defect, in which case they were never married to begin with, because once it retroactively gets annulled, they were never married to begin with. And so she's not allowed to eat truma until we know that something like that can't happen. So the Gemara says, if they had chuppah, but the marriage wasn't consummated yet, also, because he may not see her body close enough, because obviously they wear clothes, they have tznius, but once the marriage will be consummated, he'd be able to see if there's any major physical problems with her body. That he wouldn't want to marry someone who would have a certain handicap. Like I mentioned, having to wear a prosthetic is a big thing. I mean, a lot of people nowadays, it helps their quality of life. But if you would know that they were a prosthetic, maybe you would prefer to have someone not a prosthetic. I mean, nowadays people's attitudes to this is a little bit different than it was then, but we could certainly understand why he might think that. So the Gemara says, Hasa mivdak badik v'hadar ma'ayel. So if he's already preparing everything for the chuppah, even if he didn't consummate the marriage yet, he will have done inquiries to find out that there wasn't any major issues. So Gemara somewhere else, maybe it's and I don't think it's in Kedushin, but maybe it's in Yevamos, says that if there's if a city has a public bathhouse, he can't use an excuse that he had some type of simpon, because even though he wouldn't know from firsthand knowledge if she had some type of major physical defect, if there's a public bathhouse, other people in the city would know about it, so he would be able to find out, and so then the simpon would not be an excuse that he could use. I'm just trying to showing that not we don't need to know that for Gemara, but just this halacha of simpon, how does it work? So if someone would have a big physical defect like that, obviously the chassan wouldn't be able to see it himself to know if it's a big problem or not. But the Gemara somewhere else says that if there was a public bathhouse, other people would know. So then a person could ask and make sure that there's no major defects. Now, lahavdil nowadays with the shidduchim things, the questions that some people ask, some of them are way too worthless or too detailed that most people wouldn't know the answer to that. Do they take antipsychotic medicines? I don't know. How would I know that? I know the guy, but we're not roommates. People go a little bit overboard in some of the questions these days. But also, it's an issue of priorities. Do they know? Are they asking it because they hear you're supposed to ask, or whatever? That's a whole different topic of what to ask about, what not to ask about. So the Gemara says, now we're 57b4 Alameata, if this problem of having a certain defect like this, Eved Kohen Shalakum Yisrael Lo Lecha B'Truma. If a Kohen buys a slave from Yisrael. So when the slave was owned by Yisrael, he's not allowed to eat truma. Now that he's bought by a Kohen, he is allowed to eat truma. Maybe this slave is going to have some type of defect that the Kohen wouldn't want. It would be a disqualifying defect, and then it ends up that the sale wouldn't be a real sale, and the slave couldn't eat truma. So the Gemara says, no, simpon bavadim leika. There's no problem of simpon for slaves. Simpon is something that affects your wife. If your wife has a certain type of blemish or physical handicap, not a slave. The ilavrai, if it's an exterior problem, hakachazile. Like if you see right away, lahavdil, into the book To Kill a Mockingbird, what's his name? Tom Robinson. He only had one hand because the other hand was cut off in an accident. So if you want to look at someone, you see he only has one hand, you want someone who could harvest, so he needs two hands to harvest properly. You can see that if he's missing, let's say, a hand like that, he can't work. You could see that right away, and you wouldn't buy him. From the fact that you bought him anyway, it shows that defect isn't a problem for you. The e de gavai, and if it's an inside problem, you only bought him to work, and you're not having intimate relations with that guy, so it doesn't matter if he has an internal something that's not visible from the outside defect. But for a wife, the inside, the things that's not visible from the exterior is an issue. Nimtzaganav, what if he's a thief? Oh, Kuvustus. Oh, Kuvustus higiu. Or he's a Kuvustus higiu. It's a good sale. So what's a Kuvustus? Rashi says a kidnapper. Tosfos says it's impossible that it's talking about a kidnapper, because someone who's a kidnapper, there'd be a bounty on his head. The government would want to, kidnapping is a very serious crime. So there must be some type of rumors that this guy would be a kidnapper. So therefore, Tosfos says that Kuvustus is more similar to a Ganav, and a Kuvustus means a gambler. So and nowadays we could understand this concern pretty well. I mean, the Gemara in Avos already says, Marbe Avadim, Marbe Gazal. The more Avadim you have, the more theft is going to be around. They have, what do they call, sticky fingers. And some of your good silverware is going to disappear, this or this, time this is going to appear. But that's going to happen. If you're using Avadim, that's going to happen. And so if he's a gambler, so Tosfos, it makes good sense what Tosfos says, because if they have gambling debts, they go to the pigeon races. That's the gambling debt those days. So they might need to pay off a debt. So also they might have sticky fingers. So Tosfos's explanation makes a lot of sense. But Rashi, I don't know what the pshat in Rashi is. Ma'ika. So ma'ika. So what kind of problem with the slave could cancel a sale, that the sale of buying the slave would be annulled? List if there's an armed robber or there's some type of death penalty from the government. Now, if he's a kidnapper, wouldn't a kidnapper be more of the like Tosfos says against Rashi? That would be more like a list of Mizurin or Muktav Lamalchus. Kidnapping is a pretty serious crime. It's much more serious than a thief, being a burglar or a thief, and it would be. So Tosfos makes a lot of sense, but we need to know Pshat and Rashi. I'm not sure what it is. Also, the fact that Ganavim, Rashi says somewhere, is it Rashi here or is it Rashi somewhere else? Because it's in Bava Basra and it's in somewhere else also. Rashi seems to say that a majority of Avadim are Kuvustus. So it makes sense to say majority of Avadim steal. That's not, but to say the majority are kidnappers, that doesn't really make much sense. Kidnapping was that common. So that's one of the reasons why Tosfos rejects Rashi's opinion. Okay, so why can't why midrabanan can't a woman who's mikudeshes to a kohen eat truma? So Rav Ula's opinion was because she might give truma to her siblings, and Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda or bar Yehuda. An argument says Rav, but some say they take out the word Rav. He said the problem is the kedushin could potentially be annulled if he finds out that she has a certain type of a serious disfigurement or a physical handicap. So mechti bein lamar lo achla my beinayu. So for Ula's opinion or Shmuel bar Yehuda's opinion, she's not allowed to eat truma. What's the nafkamina between them? What's the practical difference between the two answers? The difference is if he accepted her as is, even if she would have, he said, I think so highly of her, even if she ends up that, she would be physically, she would be, let's say, an amputee, I would marry her anyway. So Kibel is he explicitly accepted her. Masar Vahalach, according to Rashi, is two separate things. Either the father's agents. We saw this, I don't know, a little bit of a couple months ago. If the father's agents, if the father gave her over to agents of the husband to transport her to the house, or halach, the father went with the husband's agents to as she's traveling from his house to her house. So according to Rashi, it's three different cases. According to Tosfos and Kedushin, it's only two cases. Maser halach is one combined case. So for the case of Kibel, Ula's opinion would still apply. So she might give it to her siblings, but in regard to the Kedushin being annulled because she has a severe handicap or a significant handicap, he accepted it. That's not a problem. And then Masr B'halach would be the opposite. Masr B'halach is if the husband would find out that she has a significant handicap, the marriage could still be annulled. But because she's already en route to him, she's not with her siblings, and we're not worried that she's going to give truma. So according to Ula's answer, it wouldn't be a problem according to Ula for her to eat truma because she's not with her siblings anymore, so we're not worried that she's going to share with her siblings. But according to Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda's opinion, this is still a problem because the marriage isn't finished enough that it could still be annulled in case the husband finds out that she has a significant handicap. Okay, fourth line on Nun Ches Amud Aleph. Rabbi Tarfon Amar Nosan Kol Truma. Rabbi Tarfon says you're allowed to give her all the truma. So we're going to see she's going to have to sell the truma. We're going to see some more opinions right now. Amar Abaye Machlokas B'Bas Kohen LeKohen. This machlokas is only if a bas kohen is marrying a kohen. So she's already used to eating truma, and she's going to remain eating truma. Avo b'vas Yisrael kohen divra kol mechza hulin mechza truma. But if a bas Yisrael is marrying a kohen, everyone holds that all the Tanaim hold that the husband is required to give her half chulin and half truma. So Rashi says a bas kohen is an expert. She knows how to keep truma from being tmeya, when to touch it, when to not touch it. She knows how to sell it. But a Bas Yisrael doesn't know these things. So because the Bas Yisrael isn't as accustomed to it, so he can't give her all truma. He can't expect her to be perfect right away, and you can't take risks with truma because there's a special halacha that you certainly can't eat the truma when you're tamei, or in certain cases you can't touch it, but you're also not allowed to let truma become tamei in the fact that it becomes a loss. So, people will make mistakes the first few times. It's important, the first time and I'm speaking from personal experience, the first time you kasher a kitchen, it's important to have someone who knows what they're doing with you, because it's likely that you're going to make a mistake at some point, not maliciously, but you could learn, you could prepare and know everything you're supposed to do, but you still need someone with you that first time to make sure, that you don't make any mistakes. We learned a brisa like this. Rabbi Tarfon Omer nosin la hakol truma. Rabbi Tarfon says you can give her all truma. Rabbi Kiva Omer mechza chulin umechza truma. Rabbi Kiva says you give her half chulin, half truma. So this brisa up until this point is exactly like our Mishnah. But this brisa has an extra clause. But when is this machlok between Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Tarfon, b'bas Kohen, the Kohen? If it's a bas Kohen, marrying a Kohen. But Rabbi Tarfon says since she knows how to deal with it when she's tmeya, she's already used to it, so you can give her. And Rabbi Akiva says she might know how to do it, but still give her half truma, half Kohen, half chulin. Aval b'vas Yisrael Kohen, divrei kol mechzu chulin umechzu truma. But if it's a bas Yisrael marrying a Kohen, everyone holds. Even Rabbi Tarfon agrees. You have to give her part chulin, half chulin, and half truma. But furthermore, a further clause on this. This is saying barusa. Even if she's a bas Kohen. So the way Rashi says that Rabbi Tarfon will say that you're able to give her half all truma because her father and her family, they know about selling truma when you need to sell truma, because if you're all tameh, let's say lahavdil, the family all gets the flu at the same time. So sometimes the family might all make each other tameh at some point. So suddenly you can't use any of the truma. They know how to sell the truma in a way that they're not going to make it tameh and they can sell it. So Barusa Bas Kohen. So because she is an heiress, but she's still living in her father's house, her father and her brothers or whoever will help her sell any of the truma that she needs to get chulin in case she became tmeya. So that's where Rabbi Tarfon allows her to receive all truma. But if she was an asua, and so this is a case where they're married, but she's still in her father's house. So it's a little bit of an unusual case. Rashi says the case is where she is not in his house. Somehow, I don't know exactly, but they're married, but they have separate houses. So because she's not in her father's house, they're not going to be able to help sell her. So therefore, Rabbi Tarfon would agree that you would have to give her partial truma and partial chulin, so she doesn't have to worry about selling the truma. Now, another opinion, which in our Mishnah we only had Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Tarfon. Now we're having a couple more opinions. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer nosin l'shtei yados shel truma va'achas shel chulin. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says you give her 2 portions of truma and 1 portion of chulin. Rabbi Yehuda Omer nosin lahakol truma v'himacheres v'lokechas b'damim chulin. Rabbi Yehuda says you can give her all truma and she can sell some of that truma and buy with the proceeds chulin. So right now this seems to be pretty similar to Rabbi Tarfon. The Gemara will clarify what their differences is. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer kol makom shehuskar truma nosin lakiflayim b'chulin. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says whenever it says that you give her truma, or the opinions that hold that you can give her all truma, you have to give her double the truma as if it would be chulin. You have to give her double. So let's say you needed to give her 1.5 pounds of chulin, you'd have to give her 3 pounds of truma, of flour. Because the truma is worth less, so you have to give her more truma, so she'll be able to buy the right amount of chulin food. My benayu, what's the machlokas? Ika benayu tircha. The machlokas is about the trouble that it takes to sell it. So Rashi says this means Rabbi Yehuda's opinion and Rabbi that the last 2 opinions that according to Rabbi Yehuda she'll buy and sell. But according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, you need to give her extra truma so that she won't have to be an astute business person, because sometimes, like we've mentioned, truma is worth less. So if she's not an astute business person, she might not be able. There's some places in town you might be able to get a little higher, and some places a little lower. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel doesn't want her to be worried that doesn't want us to be concerned that maybe she's in a part of town where she gets less money for truma than chulin. Therefore, you have to make sure you give her extra chulin, so it's going to be easier for her to sell and still have enough money to buy the chulin. Two dots. Hayavam eino malcha b'truma. A yavam does not give her the status of eating truma if the 12 months after her kedushin completes by that. Hold on a second, please. So why, if her husband died and even though she has to do yibum, why doesn't the yibum allow her brother-in-law the kinyan that her brother-in-law is going to make? Why doesn't that allow her to eat truma if the 12 months pass? My time at kinyan kasma rachman b'hai kinyan da'achavu. When the pasuk in Parshas, I think I said it was an Emor, I think it's actually in Bahar, talks about eating truma, it's if he's your acquisition. This isn't his acquisition; it's his brother's acquisition, because his brother was the one who gave her the kedushin, or however else even if he was Mekadesh her not with money, but once you did Kedushin, it all has the same status like you were Mekadesh with money. If she was 6 months with her fiance, but then he died, and then 6 months with the Yavam. So if the Gemara says that she needs to be in front with the husband for all 12 months, we know that being part of the time with the Yavam isn't gonna allow her to eat truma either. So why does the Mishnah have to say this? So the Gemara says zu ve'ein tzarach lomar zuktani. So sometimes the Mishnah gives a thing. So I don't know if there's a general rule for this. Sometimes we want to say if the Gemara is saying something else, it has to be telling us a new halacha. Sometimes, and it happens sometimes, that the Gemara explains the Mishnah is giving us this case, and I don't even have to mention this other case because it's a kavachomer from the first case. And this is a case where the Gemara lists a halacha, and then it lists the less obvious case. And the logic of the Mishnah listing both of that cases is to say this case doesn't work. Certainly, this other case also doesn't work. When I say doesn't work in this context, means she's not allowed to eat truma. Okay, let's leave it here. The last two dots are on Nun Ches Amud Aleph.